Alright, we're good, y'all. We back, man. Today, we're going to be covering a different topic. Today, we're going to be reacting to some of this David news. I've been keeping up with it off camera. You know, I've been watching videos and keeping up with the news on it off camera. And they just came up with another update, so I decided why not react to it. But we finna get into it, bro. This junk sick, bro. This news, all this, bro, it's crazy. But we finna get into it, bro. Y'all like, comment, share the video, but subscribe if you're not subscribed. We finna keep going, man. I appreciate all the support. I get it.
There could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary, sadistic stuff.
Big news on the David Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. We now know who the private investigator is that was hired by the Hollywood Hills landlord for the home that David had been staying at, right by where the Tesla was found with Celeste's body inside. Well, we just sat down with this investigator himself, Steve Fisher, about what he has learned so far, what we can expect next. Let me tell you, it is shocking. Welcome to Sci-Fi.
This nigga
Presented by
weird.
Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Webb.
Why he even...
Hey, real quick, everybody, this is another long
Why he even got relations with this young behind
in David's abandoned Tesla that was nearby. Well, not only do we know who this private investigator is, but I just interviewed him. Yeah, you're going to see him on this episode, and I'm recording this introduction after I interviewed him, and let me just say, he reveals a lot, okay? A lot. Now, this may not provide all the answers, but I will tell you, if you are listening to what he has to say, you're starting to get a better picture of a lot of things, okay? So this PI himself, Steve Fisher, will play that interview in a minute. Now, quick refresher. So police raided this $3.64 million home, which David had reportedly been paying tens of thousands of dollars in rent. We know that Celeste's body was found in the trunk of his impounded Tesla back in September, that the Tesla was near this property. And to be clear, since then, there's been no suspects that have been named, no persons of interest, no arrests.
It's crazy, man.
He's moved out of that mansion.
I don't even think she was 16 yet,
properties that he owned in Texas to his mother. The whole thing has been a lot of unanswered questions. And that is where this LA landlord, apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name here, Malden Truvanovich, stepped in. He wasn't content to sit back and just wait for the LAPD, so he brought in his own private investigator to start digging, to get some more answers. We've talked about that in a previous episode, but now we actually know who that investigator is, Steve Fisher. I'm going to play you that interview. It is something, but let me just say real quick, pin down exactly what this case is about. This all started on September 8th. LAPD officers were called to a tow yard on Mansfield Avenue in Hollywood after workers noticed this foul odor coming from a Tesla that had been sitting there. That car was registered to 20-year-old singer David, real name David Anthony Burke, the Houston-born artist behind the hit homicide. That Tesla had been abandoned near the Hollywood Hills rental property, towed away, and was just sitting there. And when officers opened the front trunk, they found something horrific. Human remains wrapped in plastic. A few days later, it was confirmed that that body belonged to 14-year-old Celeste Rivas.
14.
Runaway who had been missing from Lake Elsinore since April of 2024. Her remains would decompose, suggesting
14 years old.
For weeks. The cause
and they're supposedly dating, bro.
And while David is not being considered at this point officially as a suspect or even a person of interest, the internet started connecting the dots, or seemingly.
How he not a person of interest when that was his car?
Screenshots from Discord chats, live streams.
Look, they got videos together.
Started circulating, all suggesting that they.
How he not a person of interest, bro? I don't see how this nigga not even.
Z had reported those that were close to David, but Celeste was 19 years old. Maybe there was a relationship going on, and fans have pointed out that both she and David had that same small tattoo on their fingers. And if that wasn't really enough, David has this unreleased song with Celeste in the title that's been recorded. Everything has unraveled for David since the discovery. There's been a canceled tour date, pause in promotions for his upcoming album, drop brand deals, and while all of this is happening, David has been making some major legal and financial moves. He's retained Blair Burke, the powerhouse Hollywood defense attorney who's representing people like Harvey Weinstein. David transferred the deeds to 2 Texas properties to his mother right after one of those houses was apparently swatted, this false reporting of a shooting and a dead. But now let's get to it. Let's circle back to that Hollywood Hills rental property, how a private investigator, a PI, even got involved in this case. So according to LA Magazine, the police had executed a search warrant on that property back on September 17th. So since David had been renting it for reportedly about $20,000 a month, a home that was owned by a man named Truvanovich. and officers reportedly collected electronics, computers, searched the drains for traces of blood or tissue. At least that's what reported to TMZ. Officially confirmed that. But this homeowner had said that after he heard almost nothing from the LAPD about what they found, he was frustrated. And that is when he made his move and hired his own PI. He told TMZ and the Daily Mail that his family wanted answers about what might have happened in or around this home, and that he wasn't trying to interfere with the police investigation. He just didn't want to be left in the dark about what connections, if any, his property could have to all this. And TMZ reports that the LAPD has since seized surveillance footage from the same home cameras that could show exactly who entered or exited the property. Now, this homeowner reportedly told the outlet that he hasn't even seen the footage himself, out of respect for his tenant's privacy. He also claims the police still haven't given him a copy of the warrant or told him exactly what they took. So the big question now is what exactly happened in or around that home, right? And whether the private investigator hired by this landlord, this property owner, has found anything that could shed light on that timeline. That is where we're heading next, okay? Just one more thing before we get to him, something that we've learned. LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman spoke out, confirmed the case is still under investigation. No case has been presented to his office yet. We're going to get into that a little bit. But now I want to bring on our special guest. I'm joined by private investigator Steve Fisher, who was hired by David's former landlord. Really appreciate you taking the time here to talk about this. First
so this
off,
private
Steve,
investigator.
how were you hired? How were you retained in this matter?
So originally, when the case, when the body was originally found, I had another missing persons case going in LA of a female, and we thought that that could be that individual. And so I kind of stayed with the case for a little while until she was identified, and we knew it wasn't. And I had, discovered some other things, such as when the car was towed and the photos from it being towed and whatnot. And, the owner had gotten in touch with me of the house, and I shared some things with him, and it just kind of evolved from there. But one thing, I would say is he is the owner of the house. It wasn't David's landlord. David wasn't even on the lease, and the owner never even knew that David was in the house. It was actually Josh Marshall, his manager, who had leased the house.
But to be clear, David was living there, right?
Yes, he was definitely staying there. It just was not known to the owner.
So the manager.
Right. Okay, and by the way, I understand this is an active investigation. There might be limited what you can share, but what exactly is he looking for in this? What exactly is this property owner? What kind of answers is he looking for?
So we're really kind of evolved.
So David name
was
on
the search warrant was served, I believe, on the 17th or 18th, and it was a forced entry search warrant, meaning that nobody was home at the time, and they did not leave a copy of the warrant or of the return, the inventory list of the items that they took from the house, and it was really kind of born out of that. I was not officially retained at that time, but I helped him try to obtain that, and we told robbery homicide, hey, listen, no warrant was left behind. David was out on tour. Josh Marshall lives out of state, we found out. So the owner had his representative go to the house immediately after he found out about this, and there was no warrant, no return. So he really just wants to understand what of his property could have been taken and what the status of that is. And then also, this is troublesome when you learn something like this. All of a sudden you're thrown into this, and he feels absolutely horrible for Celeste's family. And he's like,
if there's anything
that involves, in and around my house that
14 years old,
could help, then I want to discover that. And I'll tell you that there have been things that we've learned that we've turned right over to LAPD, but we think there's significant, things that could help.
Do you mean that there might be evidence that a crime was committed at that house?
Not so much a crime, no. And I'll just be honest with you, we don't have any evidence that anything happened to Celeste at that house. But there's definitely evidence that we've collected that helps the timeline. We now have a much better understanding of when that Tesla arrived at that final parking spot. I'll tell you, I do have surveillance from different houses in the neighborhood showing Tesla being moved. So things like that, and I'm not even saying that LAPD didn't have that. I'm sure they did, but we wanted to make sure, and we did some work on the up-resing the footage to find out who was driving the vehicle. vehicle, and there were some other items that were found at the house that weren't taken during the search warrant. And search warrants are limited, right? They can't just go take everything. It's what the judge, and we don't know how broad that search warrant was because we haven't seen it. That's what we'd like to see. But there were some things that were not taken into custody of LAPD that we think are significant, and they're including digital media and some other things that really help nail down timeline and things like that.
And you handed that over to LAPD?
We have. Literally the day that we, the things that we've recovered, we've given to LAPD within 24 hours.
Do you know who was driving that car, that Tesla? You don't have to tell me. Do you know the identity?
Yeah, as far as going to the final, what we believe is the final parking spot where it was towed from, yes.
And that information has been communicated to law enforcement.
So
they know
it's
the
been
last
given to
person
law
that was driving
enforcement.
that car.
They're not going to tell us if they're confirming if that's that person or not. Robbery, homicide, the way they work is we'll take your information. We're not going to speak on it, So I don't know. But listen, it's very clear that that neighborhood is filled with surveillance cameras, and the timelines. Once we learn those dates, and we can see other things that were happening that were even public on Instagram and whatnot, or going on in those people's lives, it makes a lot of sense.
So let me ask you this. If you see when the car was parked there, have you seen anything to indicate that Celeste's body was transferred into that car after the car was parked there? Or in other words, do you believe that her body was in that car the minute it was parked in the location it was ultimately towed from?
So I'll say I have no evidence of a body being transferred before or after. There's no evidence of that at all. But I will say, when it was moved to that position, it was already like that. So that car had not been used in a very long time. It was super dirty, caked on dirt. I'll tell you, this was in late July. So it's bizarre because we also got media that that car was used a lot. David even spoke about it in Instagram videos. He took it to a detail shop and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, the very beginning of the year, that car, something happens. And that car's not, which we didn't know until the search warrant was served, that there's a red Tesla in the garage, which I can tell you was leased on February 1st.
Yeah, let me just narrow down here. Do you have the precise date of when that car, one with the Tesla, with Celeste's body inside, when it was left there? Do you know the specific date of when it was left in Hollywood Hills?
I believe so. I believe it, late July. Very late July.
So one thing that we've heard, and this is something we've talked about, is the LAPD has seized footage from the rental property, multiple security cameras around the property. There are even reports of a smashed ring camera on the ground.
Yeah.
And according to TMZ, police seized all the footage from multiple security cameras at the house last month when they executed the search warrant. TMZ described that footage as a, quote, potential gold mine for investigators. And the question becomes, did you see anyone coming into or leaving that property after the Tesla was there? So after the Tesla with Celeste's body inside is there, can you tell us you saw people coming in and out of that property before the search warrant?
No, not from the time that the Tesla was left. So from the time the Tesla was left there, he literally immediately started the tour. There was a tour bus that was leased, and I'll tell you that Tesla was moved and literally a bus departed for tour.
Okay. You talked about things that might have been taken from the house, things that you handed over to LAPD. Is there anything you can share with us about what that information may be?
One thing that you just brought up, and I guess which TMZ reported on, the security system. The house has got a very sophisticated security system, not just with cameras, but with sensors and all types of things. It all reports to a DVR. And for privacy reasons, the owner, when he leased the house, said, this is the system that's in the house, and you can use whatever functions you want on it. That's not something that then the owner could access. So we don't know if the cameras were enabled or not enabled, but if they were, it wouldn't just be cameras. It would be, we'd know anytime anybody came and went from the house, anytime anybody opened a window, everything, if they kept it like it was. But we don't know. LAPD came in and took that whole DVR. They took the entire system, which you would expect. And I've talked to the security company that installed the system, and they've told me, how it was set up. We think it was probably running because there's limited alerts that the security guy can see, which is stuff like if there's a major failure. And there was a low power failure warning that triggered right when they were executing the search warrant. And I think that's when they unplugged the system. So there's reason to believe that the system was running. Whether the cameras were covered or not, I don't know. I can tell you that some of the smoke sensors in the house were covered, and that's probably because maybe they were, I don't know what they were doing in the house. So the cameras might have been covered as well.
During the course of your investigation so far, have you learned more information about Celeste and David, perhaps their connection, anything we should be thinking about that hasn't been publicly reported? Is your investigation also into them as well?
Sure, yeah, and you know, one of the reasons that we kind of come public with what I'm doing is because, you know, I have a little bit different method of working than a lot of private investigators and then what people think is the proper way of doing it. I believe in this digital age, and when, especially the younger generation, when they're on places like Discord and you don't even know their real identities, you know, I put myself out there, and those people do come to me, and a tremendous amount of people have come to me, and I've learned a lot. Now, listen, a lot of it's circumstantial, right? But there are people that are directly in his orbit, and there are people that have photos and videos, and we've gotten a lot of photos and videos from inside the home itself. So we can put people at certain dates and times at the house, and there's a lot of them. It's in the thousands.
Do you know if Celeste was ever at that property?
So, you know, what we recovered, we don't have any of her at that property. We have pictures of her and that were taken by David, we assume, because it's not on a camera phone, but these photos are on a regular camera at different locations, and it really makes me think that it's likely she had another place she was staying. I can tell you that there was a lot of time spent towards downtown LA, and I'll say the last photo that we have of Celeste is Jan.
We were wondering when, you know, she was last seen alive. There was that surveillance footage of her seemingly went away from her neighborhood.
And that was September of 24, I believe. So we didn't have anything. We were like, where was this girl in 2025? But we do have a photo of her on July 2nd, early in the morning, July 2nd, 2025.
Has anyone, and just to be clear, you don't know more information about when she died, right?
No. I don't have any information of how she died, when exactly she died. Investigations are always moving, and right now I tend to believe it happened a while ago. A long time ago, I think January, February, things changed. I mean, you can see it in the photos and everything. And I also think when I first started looking at this case, I'm very much an Occam's razor type of person, where I think things are a lot easier than people try to make them sometimes, especially online, into these big things. And I thought this was going to be a tragic overdose, which it very well still could be. And they made a bad decision because they didn't want to expose a potential relationship and put her in this Tesla, and maybe he thought he could get somebody to get rid of that car, and they were just like, no, I'm not doing it, and just got left there. But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is, there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary, sadistic stuff, and that's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot in time, and things just, you know, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
Has anyone from David's team, management, legal, anybody reached out to you or your client?
You know, I know that my client's been in touch with his manager, but only for the purpose of the lease, because they did ask to terminate the lease. And I believe the other manager that technically was the owner of the red Tesla, I think was in touch with him just because they needed access to the house to get that vehicle and stuff out. Because that's another thing that they could be key in this, is that there's only one key to that house, and who had that, and who had access to it, and who was in it. Because we also have evidence that while David was on tour at the time between the Tesla being found and the search warrant being served, David was on tour, but somebody was in that house, and there was actually a report made, not the police, but that homeowner association has a robust private security company, and we've gotten videos from them and reports. And so who had that key is probably the same person that, you know, had access to the Tesla.
Do you know who that person is, and do you believe that is the person that moved the Tesla?
So I believe I definitely know who moved that Tesla in that late July before they went on tour. I can't say who the person, and I don't mean I can't say for, I mean, but I don't know who exactly was in that house because it's just a report, but there's video, but you can't make a person out. But somebody was in the house, and being that there's only one key, it's like, okay, who had access at that time? So is it the same person that moved the Tesla? Was another last part of the plan about to go in motion as far as getting rid of her body? I don't know.
Now, we heard this week from LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman, and he actually addressed this case directly when a TMZ reporter caught up with him outside the DA's office. And regarding the status of the case, he said, quote, "It is currently under investigation. We don't discuss suspects or the points in a continuing investigation. When and if that case is presented to the DA's office and we make a decision on it, I'll make sure you're one of the first to know. The case has not been presented to our office for filing consideration." And just to underline that, a spokesperson for the DA's office confirmed to Complex that, yeah, no case has been presented for filing consideration. The LAPD also told the outlet that the county medical examiner still hasn't determined a cause or manner of death, saying, quote, "It remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond the concealment of her body." Now, Steve, you just told us a lot of information here. Are you surprised that we don't have a confirmed suspect from law enforcement or a person of interest or even an arrest at this point? Or can you say from what you're seeing, that makes sense, but Jesse, maybe being on the lookout for something soon?
Yeah, I would say, Jesse, that makes sense, but maybe be on the lookout for something soon. Yeah, I've seen this in a lot of cases. It tells me, listen, I don't have any inside information on this. I'm just saying, from my opinion, that this means that during the examination, the autopsy examination, there was nothing very obvious, such as a crushed skull, a bullet hole, anything like that. So they're waiting on toxicology to come back to make that final determination. Now, is the medical examiner in contact with the detectives in between this time? Are they? Absolutely. You know, do they have a preliminary determination? I'm sure they do. I think the DA's office is working side by side with the detectives and telling them, this is what we need for these charges, this is what we would need for these charges. Can you get it or not get it? Listen, a crime 100% happened here. At minimum, it's the concealment of a body, right? So we know somebody did that. Hopefully, it's not, a mutilation. Hopefully, those initial reports were wrong about her being dismembered. But one thing I have to say, even though I talked about how we found some things that could have meant they had a really twisted plan in place to get rid of her, it never went in motion. So you can't charge somebody for a crime that they may have thought about doing. So we may never know more about that.
So, Steve, before I let you go, do you have any indication about where David is right now?
I don't. I have no idea, and it's kind of bizarre, because his group has stayed so silent. What's left of his group, I guess, and I'm not even sure the conversations that the owner did have with his management in breaking that lease. I'm not even 100% sure his management knows at this time where he's at. I think his attorney might be the only one, and his parents.
Steve Fisher, really appreciate you taking the time.
All right, y'all, that's the end of this video, man. First, bro, I don't know why this man not in police custody, dog. You feel me? I don't know. Unless the nigga just hiding or something. But this whole situation crazy, dog. First of all, the girl underage, 14, 15, however old. Then she found in the nigga car dead. They don't even know how the girl died. But this whole joint crazy, bro. It's messed up, bro. But let me know what y'all think, man. Y'all be safe out there, bro. Parents, y'all watch your kids, man. Watch your daughters, watch your sons. You feel me? These people be weird, bro. These people crazy. Watch your kids, man. Lead them in the right direction. You feel me? But y'all drop in the comments what y'all think about this, bro. I'm gonna try to. I will be on the lookout for more updates, and keep on reacting to it. You feel me? But it's crazy, bro. Y'all like, comment, share the video, man. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and just be on the lookout for more updates about this situation. And I appreciate all the support, man. I'm out.